Evening, everybody. Hopefully, everybody here can enjoy the long weekend, assuming, you're in a country that celebrates Labor Day, which is kind of ironic because, the people who actually do labor usually have to work on Labor Day, and the people who, have jobs that bust unions up or prevents unions from forming always get the day off and hang out at their country club. It's kind of ironic when you think about it, and wildly wrong, Labor Day. So if you're a worker in a non-essential job, you shouldn't have to work. Obviously, police officers, firefighters, nurses, doctors. After, being through the pandemic, we know what an essential job is. And a country club, which they opened early during the pandemic because, the rich folks like them. It's where they hang out and they pay people to pretend to be their friends. I speak from 10 years of experience. They get special treatment. It's almost like we're an oligarchy. But I digress. Today I have an important topic in the witchcraft community. There's merchandise for this saying. It is a common saying. It is an empowering saying. It is a saying every woman should learn the meaning behind. And that is, be Lilith, never Eve. Okay, so what does that mean? It's a comparison between, based on the Abrahamic tradition, the first two women created. The first being Lilith, who was created from the same clay as Adam and therefore equal to him. And then Eve, who was created from Adam's rib after Lilith chose exile over submission. But the meaning of be Lilith, never Eve is quite deep, and some of its facets seem to get overlooked. Now, the one that doesn't is, essentially be Lilith, never Eve, be empowered. In other words, demand to be treated equal to your male counterpart. Do not allow yourself to be treated as property. Do not submit simply because that the man wants you to submit. He doesn't own you. He doesn't necessarily, call the shots or know more just by virtue of being male. Well, the Abrahamics don't really like that, but that's kind of what they're going for. That's why it's like, Lilith, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, then what do you mean in Isaiah 34:14? It says Lilith, and night creature, night demon, and she's the queen of the night, and you call her evil. Oh, well, King James Version doesn't say that. That's the one that matters. It's like, so your religion started in the early 1600s then? In English? They spoke English in the Middle East, back in the Roman era? Actually, and you go way back, or, way back into the Bronze Era. Didn't know that. I didn't know that. They didn't. But yes, so that message of empowerment to, be an empowered woman and not submit to a male because the male says you must submit to me and I'm the boss because I said so. And there's never really heard a good logical thing behind that other than, they point to their book and go, book says it. Book says a lot of things. Book has kosher laws that I'm yet to meet a Christian who abides by them. They also have rules about, can't wear a mix of two different types of fabric. It's like, hey, if we're saying these rules are so important, why aren't you following all of them? That's why they'll bash the gay community too. But it's like, wait a minute. Which rules are important? Which rules can be ignored? And who gets to decide that? And who gave them that authority? They can't answer that. So that's the basic meaning of the saying. But it's deeper. It's more to Lilith than just Lilith wouldn't submit. And, she became empowered. And some of the other meanings that gets lost is independent. Well, Lilith is independent. Now, there's more to being independent than just, not being submissive to a male partner. When Lilith was in exile, when she was banished, she was completely alone. So, Eve, by definition, because she does whatever Adam says, is a follower. Lilith is a leader. She became a queen in her own right. So, being a leader doesn't just mean not being submissive to a man because he says to. It also means being independent of groupthink as a whole. So that could be some, narcissistic queen bee woman who thinks she owns you for whatever reason, or, that she's the queen of everything because she said so, and, which is pretty patriarchal. I'll be honest, where I live, good old boys club rules, and a lot of the queen bee women I met that have this authority derive it usually from the fact that they are a daughter of someone in the good old boys club. So they're deriving power from the same patriarchal system. And through nepotism, of course, which they love around here. So yeah, it means to be completely independent. Lilith is all about being who you truly are. And that doesn't just mean, not submitting to traditional gender roles. It means being your authentic self and rejecting fads, popularity, walking your own path no matter how hard it is. So that's something that gets lost, because just because you're not conforming to your traditional gender role, if you're conforming to groupthink, like, you should hook up with him because he's, so-and-so's son and they have money. Lilith wouldn't do that either. It's about doing what you want to do and not worrying about what other people think, be it, some guy who thinks he owns you, or some queen bee narcissistic woman who thinks that, she's the leader of this group of women because she says so, so you must submit to her will. It's about free will and no one else's will other than your own. And that gets lost in it too. Again, being empowered means Lilith became empowered through walking her own path and transcending into who she truly is, manifesting her own abilities and her own need for vengeance and rage, and how she was wronged and trying to reclaim what was taken from her. Submission, whether you're, submitting to a male partner or submitting to a will of a queen bee, because that queen bee, say you're, for example, obviously the most common example is the traditional gender roles of women submit to man and, stay at home and he own you. Gross. But another one could be, because this would be against Lilith too, independent, fake independent woman, is able to stand up to man but submits to queen bee, and then queen bee orders this woman to engage in sexual activity with another woman because this woman's like a lieutenant of the queen bee, even though this woman who claims to be independent isn't interested in women sexually. That's still submission and ownership too. So with Be Lilith Never Eve, it means you don't allow anyone to tell you what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to believe, and what path you have to follow. Even if that means being completely alone. To walk the path of Lilith, you have to be willing to walk that path largely alone because, well, one, the community is very small, and two, that is how you gain Lilith's knowledge and acceptance. You have to learn how to be self-reliant. You have to get to a place on that journey where, in your mind, in accepting Lilith and getting Lilith to accept you, that you feel like you don't need anyone. And there is community and everything once you do it, but it's kind of what one has to do to really be able to connect with Lilith's dark feminine energy. So it's not just about rejecting traditional gender roles. Groupthink is bad. Groupthink is patriarchy. Groupthink is one person saying, well, I have the authority to tell you what you should do, what is right and wrong, and what you are to believe because I'm me, because I have a pointy hat. Let's say a bishop. How's a queen bee, have any more authority? I mean, at least the bishop, you've already decided to be a part of that religion, and there is educational requirements and experience and all that for a person to become a bishop. Like Queen Bee, for example, just declares it. Just declares it and bullies people into falling in line for the most part. So, but yes, it's that strong sense of independence and knowing yourself and being comfortable with who you really are and not giving a damn if that's popular or not, you know. Or even if you get vilified. I've been vilified. It's a common thing for INFJs. We talk about it in the INFJ community. The worst is, you know, when you're, because INFJs always feel that need to challenge the status quo and call out corruption and exploitation and all that. I've been doing it since I was, oh God, 11, 12, awkward middle school years. But sometimes people will cheer us on, and the introvert's like, okay, I don't really want to lead, but I guess I can. I believe in this. And you push yourself to the point where you feel comfortable being in leadership. And your INFJs are quite effective at it. Just don't like it, really. Unless it's something they believe in. Even then, they only want to do it temporarily. But then all of a sudden, things change. The wind blows, and all the followers who don't really believe in anything run to what's ever popular. And it's like, oh yeah, all that stuff that we cheered you on and you had the balls to do it and nobody else did, we're going to vilify you for that now because it's not popular. You know, popular equals right to the follower. So yes, you know, that is now unofficially in the INFJ community known as Daenerys Targaryen syndrome, because that's the most famous example of it that most people are familiar with. But, you know, yeah, you have to be authentic with Lilith. If you want her to accept you, you have to know yourself and be confident in expressing your true self. Also in what you want. If you're going to try to form a pact with Lilith, you know, you got to be honest with her about what you want and why and what your intentions are. Because I've said it in other videos, there's no fooling her. I don't care how good of a liar you are, you know, or how cunning you think you are. The Queen of Witches is more cunning. She is a goddess. She is omnipotent. Yeah, you know what I was trying to say. You can't fool her. So, plus, she has trust issues, and rightfully so. It's another reason why I like her. We have that in common. So, you know, if you're going to try to lie to her, she's not going to help you. She may even retaliate, because she doesn't handle betrayal well at all. So, yeah, always be upfront and honest with Lilith about who you are, what you want, and why you want it. Because she's not very judgmental. You know, she's not really. And you have to be patient. She does things in her own time. Nobody. This is part of back to the be Lilith Never Eve. Nobody, and I mean nobody, tells Lilith what to do. None of the other demons, not even Lucifer himself. He kind of does, but she doesn't listen anyway. But as far as her ranking in the Croatia, none of the other 72 demons, you know, they don't mess with Lilith. Yeah, you know. It's kind of badass when you consider she's the only female. Yeah, but she's the queen in her own right. She, you know, and she was created mortal. Think about how badass this is. The left-hand path, become a living god. Well, by that definition, who was the first person to become a god? Well, it had to be Lilith, because, you know, a fallen angel was never human. They were already, you know, divine. You know, Lucifer was an angel. He fell, as did all the, I think it was a third of the angels supposedly followed him. But my point is that they were never mortal. Lilith was, well, I guess they were immortal. I guess she would have been created an immortal human, but without supernatural abilities, if we're believing the Abrahamic stuff. And she became a goddess. She transcended, you know. She learned secret knowledge, like blood magic, which is highly associated with her. And, you know, through blood magic, and I think it was in, I think she was, like, rebirthed out of fire. I think she came out of fire. Like, she was human. She came out, and she had her draconic wings and her horns and all that. She can take many forms now, but I can't remember, you know, from all the stories about Lilith as how exactly she, you know, first took that demonic form. I do know is that even under pressure, be Lilith Never Eve, even under pressure, you can't back down with who you really are. Lilith was pressured by 3 archangels to go back against her will to the Garden of Eden and submit to Adam. I mean, think about this. If you're going to follow Lilith, this is how important being yourself is and being true to yourself. She chose exile in the desert, completely alone, over submission in literal paradise, where I guess had everything she could want except free will and equality, obviously. Even though she had that at first, and then Adam cried and said, she won't submit to me. She expects to be on top sometimes. Yeah, yeah. And Lilith is said to be the most beautiful woman ever created. And that kind of makes me wonder, you know, how fragile Adam's ego was. And I'll say this again for for any males listening. Say you had a partner, a woman who was everything you could want, and you know everything was great, and she's like, I want to be on top this time. We need to take turns. Would that be a deal breaker for you? It's like, no, I must always be the dominant one. That's insane. That's insane. So, but you have to always be true to yourself and be yourself no matter what. Like I was saying, she was going to be forcibly drugged back to submit, which is God going against his word, because he told her either you submit or exile, and she's like, oh fine, banish me. But you know, Adam was lonely, so they tried, the 3 archangels tried to drag her back, and she fought him off. It's pretty badass. It tells you how strong of a demon or a dark goddess, whatever you want to say, many words to describe her, but a deity, how strong of a deity she became if she could fight off 3 archangels single-handedly. Badass. So, and even under pressure like that, she didn't back down and submit. And that's what it means to walk the path of Lilith. Sometimes being your true self, depending on what your values are, it's not going to make you popular. It's going to put a target on your back. My integrity's cost me more times than I can count. I mean, you guys all know the story about me in the fire department. I'm not going to rehash it, but me telling the truth and, you know, speaking out cost me retaliation. Me doing the right thing and going public with that got me blacklisted in that profession. And that's what it means to be true to yourself. You have to do what's right, what you believe is right, what you truly believe is right. You, not what you're being pressured to do. You know, no matter what the consequences are. Now, on the upside of this is when you get to that point, when you've built that connection with Lilith, say you're a bit of a pushover, you'll be able to transcend past the coercive control tactics when you're put into a situation where you feel like you can't say no. Oh, you can say no. Yeah, you may not, you know, you've been, especially baby boomers are really good with doing this with younger generations, making, oh, I'm superior, what I say goes. Well, they're probably the most, well, they are the most patriarchal generation alive. And I know there's generations older than them still alive. Well, World War II generation, some of them, silent, are still around, but my point's valid. So, you'll be at a point where people won't be able to, you know, use coercive control to get you to do something you don't want to do, to make you feel like you can't say no. And that's a narcissistic tactic, by the way, because when you really don't want to do something, unless you're like the most stoic of people, and I'm an INFJ, I can not show emotion pretty well. People can see it in your face. They can tell you don't want to do it. Sometimes normal people would be like, oh, okay, I better back off. Narcissistic people are like, get off on that. That's like a drug, especially if you're female, especially if you're young and female. That exploitation gets them all turned on. Yeah. Introduce them to Lilith, and it's not going to go well. They'll like it at first, but oh, she's hot. It'll go real bad after that. It's a little sidebar. Lilith sometimes is known to appear to abusive men in their dreams. Let's say they like it at first because she is a seductress. Right when they think it's going to be a good time, it goes real south real quick. Like, real quick. And, you know, they'll wake up with scratches and, you know, she'll take a not so flattering form and then have a little fun with them, you know what I mean? And that might take away their ability to stand at full attention for a while. Some succubi can do that too. Yeah, it's a little revenge thing. You know, Lilith can take all of a man's energy if she so chooses. Yeah, she could literally ride you to death if she so chooses, and she can paralyze you in your sleep too. Only if you deserve it. She doesn't just pick random victims. I don't think so. Nah. So yeah, do not believe the lies that being whoever you truly are, whatever that may be, you know, is a crime if it doesn't fit into societal norms. Now, of course, there are exceptions. There's exceptions to everything. You have to fit into laws. I'm not talking about disobeying any laws. I'm talking about being coerced and bullied into submitting to things that are simply tradition or the status quo, where there is no real authority to make you follow that. It's more like well, it's just how we do it, fall in line bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, women can't be firefighters. And if they can pass the test, you know, if they can pass the same testing process as the men, yeah, they can. That's how it works, you know. Men can't be witches. You know, if you're able to balance your male and female aspects and, you know, connect with different deities, sure you can. Understand that it's a female-dominated space, and that's never going to change, which is fine. I like being the boy in the girls' club. I was made fun of it for a long time, but now I like it. Makes me feel special. Lets me know that I'm different than everybody else. Well, not everybody else, but it lets me know that I'm different than most. And it's nice to be able to express how different I am, because I never fit in. But, yeah, and just end soon. I've been talking too long, but, you know, a little thing I want to add about that. If you're a male witch, yes, you have to stop suppressing your feminine qualities, your feminine attributes to connect with feminine energy. Doesn't mean you gotta repress your male attributes. Don't. Not at all. You just have to not suppress the female ones and keep the two in balance. It's hard, kinda, in the beginning. But, you know, especially if you're an intuitive type. Women's intuition, empathy is for women. Guess what? Whether you like it or not, your two main brain functions are deemed feminine, and that can't change. Maybe with like a traumatic brain injury, but you know what I'm saying? You're halfway there. Just don't care what other people think. If that's what you're called to, go for it. Someone asked me, you know, how Lilith would accept somebody who's transgender. Would Lilith accept that person as their gender identity gender rather than their, you know, birth gender? I honestly don't know. I don't know. As I said, I can't speak for Lilith. But based on how well I know her, my educated guess would be she probably would, as long as you're completely sincere about your identity, you know, as someone who's transgender. Like, if that's really authentically you, like you're not trying to, you know, you're not doing it for any other reason than that's who you really are. I would assume she would, you know. And I understand that's the majority of that community, but if there are, again, there's exceptions to everything. If you are one of those exceptions who's not being genuine and trying to pull a con for whatever reason, you're not going to con her. I don't think anyone ever has. You know, I really don't. I don't think that's possible. So, I hope that was helpful. Remember, if you're called to, you know, to the path of Lilith to seek empowerment, you know, and to be truly empowered and independent, remember, you must walk the path of Lilith in its entirety. And that means to be Lilith Never Eve. Means to fully embrace yourself as an individual, regardless of what groupthink or the status quo is, whether that status quo is being perpetuated by males and or females. It's about individually you and connecting with the dark mother and finding your connection to that dark feminine energy and being able to take it in and be able to use it to express who you truly are, what you truly believe in, and when necessary and when, deservingly, use that energy to exact vengeance on those who have wronged you, on those who have wronged others, and who have gotten away with it simply because that was okay in the status quo, and it's different when they do it because they're in the old boys club. No. And there's no fast track to Lilith either. Everybody has to walk the path by themselves. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you know. Doesn't matter who you were born to. Doesn't matter. You got to do it. So, hopefully that helps to all my sister witches out there who many, have walked the path of Lilith and have become Lilith. Perhaps they started out as an Eve and became a Lilith. Quite inspiring. Yeah. I love when they call out people. They're the best. My sister witches are the best at calling people out. Especially like the ones that are really tiny women, because a lot of the stereotypes that like patriarchal men will throw at empowered women doesn't apply to them. They can't. They don't know what to say. It's great. So, be Lilith, never Eve. And remember, if you are Eve, you can become Lilith. Doesn't happen overnight. And it can be a tough path to follow. But it's worth it. Become who you truly are. Break the chains and become who you were meant to be. Break the chains. And be your true self with the Queen.